All right, let's take a look at a special order incremental analysis question here, 7.3. Eloise Corp manufactures basketballs. Currently, they have capacity to produce 15,000 basketballs during the quarter. Eloise Corp receives a special order from Tires Canada for 2,000 basketballs. Tires Canada offers to purchase the basketballs for $45 per unit. Normal production costs are direct materials of $10 a unit, direct labor of $15 per hour, variable manufacturing overhead of $2.50 per unit, and total fixed manufacturing overhead of $10,000. Each unit takes a half hour, so 0.5 hours to produce. To fulfill the order, Eloise Corp would also incur a selling cost of $3 per unit. As of now, Eloise Corp is operating at 80% capacity. Keep that in mind. So they're asking, one, from a financial standpoint, to perform incremental analysis to see if Eloise Corp should accept a special order. And then two is a scenario change where how would your calculations change if Eloise Corp was operating at full capacity, so 100% capacity. So let's take a look at here. I've reproduced some of the information from the question here, as you can see. Let me just make this a little better. So total capacity is 15,000 units. Remember, they said they were operating at 80% capacity. So that being 80% of total, which was 15,000. So currently they have production runs in total of 12,000 units, meaning they have room for an additional 3,000 units. Keep that in mind. Now looking at the special order request, the special order request was for 2,000 units. They were offering a special order price of $45 per unit. To fulfill this special order, Eloise Corp would incur the special order selling costs of $3 per unit. Direct material is still going to be $10 per unit. Direct labor is still going to be $15 per hour. Variable manufacturing overhead, we assume, remains the same at $2.50 per unit. And then total fixed costs is still $10,000. And the time to complete, again, is a half hour. So the question is, should Eloise Corp accept this order? Remember, in this situation with a special order, what do you have to consider from a financial standpoint? That's what they're focusing on here. First, just the financial standpoint. From a financial standpoint, what you have to focus on is, are incremental revenues greater than incremental costs? If they are, from a financial standpoint, then yes, we should accept the order. If not, then we shouldn't, because we would incur a loss. So we have to calculate those incremental revenues, those additional revenues we would generate by fulfilling this order, and we compare it to the additional costs we would incur by also fulfilling this order. So incremental revenues, it's pretty straightforward. It's the amount of units that are related to this special order, which in this case is 2,000 units, multiplied by the special order price, which we were offered $45 per unit. So if you multiply the two together, our incremental revenues would be $90,000. So again, what does that mean? If we were to accept this special order, revenues would go up by $90,000. Now we have to see what happens to our costs. If costs increase by less than 90,000, then we should accept the order from a financial standpoint. Otherwise, we should reject it. Since we are operating at below capacity, we will not incur any additional overhead fixed costs. We don't have to increase production levels. We don't have to rent out new machinery, a new facility, or anything like that. We have enough room to fit this order in our current infrastructure. Because remember, look at this information up here. We could produce at any time 15,000 units. Before this special order, we were producing 12,000 units, and the special order is only 2,000 units. So we can fit that in and still be below our total capacity of 15,000. In this instance, our incremental costs are simply the variable cost, the additional costs we would incur if we were to go ahead and produce the 2,000 units. So you have to ask yourself, what are those costs that you would incur? It's going to be all your variable costs related to production. And in this case, there is a special selling cost. It's going to be your direct material per unit, your direct labor per unit, your variable manufacturing overhead per unit, and in also the special order selling costs. So how do we do that? Excuse me. We get special order, our direct material of $10, our direct labor of per hour is $15, but we multiply that by a half since each unit only takes a half hour to complete, so that'd be $7.50. Our variable manufacturing overhead of $2.50 per unit, and then that special order selling cost of $3 per unit. We add all those up, we multiply it by the number of units that we are trying to fulfill here, the 2,000. We get incremental costs of 61,000. You know what? I just found an error. That's why we do this live. I did not multiply my labor by that. So excuse me, our incremental costs are not 61,000. They're actually 46,000 because our labor per unit is the $15 per hour, but it only takes a half hour to complete a unit. So we would only incur half an hour's worth of labor. Regardless, our decision is going to be the same. Clearly, our incremental revenues are 90. Our incremental costs are only 46. So we should accept this order because profits would go up by $44,000. Now, it asked us, part 2, how would the analysis change if Eloise Corp was operating at full capacity? And I should change that. My apologies, everyone. Very unprofessional on my part. No, I'm just kidding. How would the analysis change if Eloise Corp was operating at full capacity? You would have to consider a few additional items. If we're operating at full capacity, things we'd have to consider is if we were to try to accept this order, we'd either have to increase our capacity from 15,000 units to at least 17,000 units to fit this special order in. And then you have to go through the thought exercise. Okay, how do we increase capacity? Well, we probably need a bigger space. We need more machinery, more equipment, more material, more labor, more support. So those are all additional costs we would have to incur to fulfill this special order. The incremental revenues are not going to change if we're operating at capacity. What is going to change are the incremental costs. In the scenario when we're operating at full capacity, our incremental costs are now going to include those additional costs that we would incur only because we wanted to increase capacity. And because of that, our calculus might change. And if we're operating at full capacity and we want to fulfill this order by increasing capacity, we would have to increase our costs, and it might not make sense financially. Another way we could fulfill this order if we're operating at full capacity is actually not increasing capacity, but by diverting sales from our normal customers to fulfill this special order. So we would be taking 2,000 units from our everyday customers and redirecting them to fulfill this special order. Now, there's obviously some ramifications from that. We could be angering our current customer base to fulfill this special order. We would have to do that thought exercise to see, does it make sense? Maybe fulfilling the special order leads to further business with this client at much larger volumes, and therefore it's much more beneficial in the long run, even though we might take a hit in the short run. These are the kinds of decisions that decision makers, managers, executives can start to make with this kind of information at their disposal. And that's why it's imperative that you understand cost behavior and what costs you would incur in each scenario under this incremental analysis.